Gotcha.
All right, welcome everybody to the second round of the Natural Resources SIG. Please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions you have during the session. The moderators will relay those questions to the presenters. If there's time at the end for more questions, feel free to just load up that Q&A box and we'll try to get everything answered. If we don't get a chance to get it answered, we'll send those questions out to the presenters after this session is over, and they should be able to get back to you. And we'll just be getting started here in a minute. So our first presenters from the WestLand Resources, environmental consulting, engineering consulting company. We have Chuck and Maggie presenting on from paper to paperless, biological surveys into GIS. So take it away, Chuck and Maggie.
Go ahead, Maggie.
Hi, everyone. We're WestLand Engineering and Environmental Services. Our presentation, like Jay said, was paper to paperless. Our biological surveys are jumping into GIS.
Hi, I'm Chuck Powell. I think most of you know me. If you don't, I'm a senior GIS specialist here at WestLand. Been here for 16 years now, and I manage many GIS projects and also manage our drone program. Maggie, you want to give just a brief intro to yourself?
Yeah, I'm Maggie Blais. I'm a senior environmental specialist at WestLand. Been at WestLand for 10 years now. Started off as a field tech, doing a lot of surveys. So I was doing a lot of the data collection, transitioned to task management, and then to project management. So now as a project manager, I am definitely learning about the importance of efficiencies in collecting data and how collecting data electronically is helping us so much provide better products and services to our clients. So here's a little overview of our presentation. We just gave a little bit of an introduction, but we'll probably do a little bit more. We're going to look at our previous data collection with a lot of our form-based paper data sheets and how those have transitioned to Survey123. And then also we'll look at how we used to collect data for surveys with a spatial component and how those are transitioning using ESRI Collector maps. Chuck has a live demonstration to provide, and we'll take questions at the end, but also questions throughout. Definitely want this to be more of a back and forth as much as we can make this a back and forth, and just have some pictures right now of some stuff we see out on surveys. There's a lowland leopard frog and a tiger swallowtail. I really like butterflies, so I have lots of pictures of butterflies. Chuck, I don't know if you have anything else to say as far as what you do, or if you want to say some other things about what WestLand does.
Yeah, I think the big change, we officially changed our name to WestLand. We're expanding in Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. We've officially changed our name, so we're no longer WestLand Resources. So we're WestLand. But like Maggie says, we do a lot of biological and cultural resources, and the whole that side, our environmental services have transitioned to these ESRI apps and other apps on mobile devices now for field data collection.
Yeah, we have no idea what the engineers do over there still. So I'm sure these are issues that everyone has probably run into. These are issues that we've run into in the past, just with having paper data collection, or you get data sheets back that are illegible or incomplete. You need hours for people to manage those data, scan them, organize them, enter them into some sort of database or Excels. You need labor hours to QA/QC that data. WestLand also has a lot of long-term monitoring projects. And so that's also another issue is, does the data look consistent from year to year? Are people able to find the data from year to year? If a project manager from that project changes after a couple of years, are there changes in the protocol that makes it so that people are collecting data a little bit differently? Those are issues we've run into. Again, we have kind of used to be more non-standard data collection across projects. So a project manager might have a task that other project managers also have to do, but they send out survey crews, and one survey crew collects data one way and another survey crew collects it in a different way. And it makes it hard to look at it across time and kind of compare. And then the biggest thing is that there's such a lag between collecting the data and then being able to verify it. And so for us, especially, our survey season is so busy in the summer because that's when everything is blooming and things are migrating. And so we're super, super busy with people in the field. It makes it really important to be able to see the data as it comes back in real time versus, you know, in the past with collecting all these paper data sheets, is somebody has to then organize them, get them into the data entry. And usually what happens with us is that ends up being a couple months down the line, and then we find out things are missing. So that's a big issue that we've run into, and it doesn't make for good data. So here's an example of one of our paper data sheets for vegetation volume surveys. As you can see, you've got species that are coded that people have to put in. There's a lot of numbers. It can get kind of messy. Somebody has to enter this data, and somebody has to check to make sure that it's entered correctly. You know, it's just a lot of work on the back end. Here's another example. You might have noticed in the previous slide, we had a picture of a bird that was actually a yellow-billed cuckoo, and that bird is a threatened species listed under the Endangered Species Act. These surveys, we have to go out 4 times in the survey season, you know, between June and August. It's very prescribed by the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we have to follow that protocol per our permit to be in compliance with it. And so this is what one of our data sheets looks like. I chose one with handwriting that's kind of hard to see, and it's really hard, obviously, for people to interpret other people's handwriting. But this is just a perfect example. If somebody doesn't look at it in time, you know, this is a very time-sensitive survey. You have to be back out into the field no more than 12 days, no later than 15 days from the prior survey, or else you're not in compliance with the protocol. So it's really important to be able to see and make sure our data is good.
I'd just like to point out too, you know, these are the forms that we would have to get the coordinates off of. A lot of times, especially when we first started, Maggie and I, we were still collecting in NAD 27, and then some projects were NAD 83. So there was a lot of confusion there. And, you know, these surveys are either really early in the morning or late in the evening a lot of the times, or it's very hot in the summer. So we get a lot of sweat soaked forms coming in. This is actually a decent one. They've been in a truck all week, covered in dust, going through our photocopiers, scanning those and so forth. It was a very, very tedious project just to translate the paper into a format that Maggie or another biologist could interpret. Would you not agree, Maggie?
Oh, yeah. And seeing it going from that, where I was collecting the data, then interpreting it, and now presenting it to clients, I can see it was just so crucial. We needed something better. So now the present, we're transitioning for those field or form heavy surveys like the vegetation volume data collection. We're transitioning to Survey123. I just took a couple snapshots of what our field form looks like for veg volume. So some of the great things about it, you can have a drop-down list option for our species. So there's no more worrying about surveyors having a spelling that's different for a species or using a different name. They can select from our list of vegetation species. We've got options for providing instructions and reminders to help surveyors, making sure that they're staying in the protocol. We can put constraints on some of these fields to help with them, making sure that they're putting in correct data. And then another, like we've said, is huge thing is just for the project managers. At the end of the day, surveyor sends the survey form to the through the Wi-Fi, and then all of a sudden the project manager can see, okay, looks like you got these transects done. Okay, we're missing these last ones. So really important. But this is our vegetation volume that it's transitioned into. And then for yellow-billed cuckoo. Oh, do we have a question?
I don't think we have a question.
Oh, okay. And then here's a snapshot of our yellow-billed cuckoo surveys. Again,
Sorry, we do have a question.
Okay.
Corey asked, did you get any kickback from the field crews collecting the data or from project managers? Was there a learning curve for some of the field crews or managers who were more familiar with the paper data sheets?
Yes. It's funny that vegetation volume one, because I was on the back end of collecting the data in years past, entering the data, and it being days and days of entering data. I was the big push to say, no, we need to be doing this electronically. And I was in the field kind of doing the testing. We had a new form, had a biologist or a botanist with me, and we were collecting it on paper and on the electronic just to troubleshoot, just for like the first day. And I loved the tablet, loved collecting the data, mainly probably because I knew how much it was going to save me on the back end. And the botanist I was with was just hated it for some reason. I'm not sure why, but we've been pushing it. And for the bird surveys, I kind of thought we'd have a little bit more pushback from people, but for the most part, people really started to like these bird surveys with the survey form. I think some people that are used to those grids and having everything looking like that versus scrolling through, it was a bit of a learning curve, but we started the transition a couple of years ago, and we've just been really pushing it. And I think now it's being really accepted by a lot of people. And for the people that know on the back end how much time it's saving with data entry and issues with data, it's just, there's no question about whether or not we need to be using it.
I'd like to point out, any group, large group or many people in groups don't like change. I mean, I hate to admit it, that I'm old enough to remember in archaeology transitioning from map and compass to Trimbles and GPS. We've all been around the ArcView to ArcMap and now the ArcPro adjustment. It's those, similar excuses. Everything's working fine. Why change? So we've all been there. Maggie's been a huge proponent on her side. And on the GIS side, it's just great that this works in our workflow, straight from ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro right into these tools. It really, Maggie has been the flag bearer on the environmental side for many years. I think we're going on year 3, correct, Maggie?
I think so. I think, yeah.
So, and I'd just like to point out these forms were all created by Maggie, where she came from a perspective of a little GIS experience. We showed her these tools. She was very comfortable in Excel, and she really has grown these forms to be very user-friendly in the field. It's been great to have her perspective of being a field tech to begin with, and she knows the struggles and how important efficient workflow works in the field, because we are very limited in time in the field, and we need to collect great data. So Maggie has designed these forms incredibly well. She has by far passed me on my little knowledge of Survey123.
Thank you, Chuck.
You're welcome.
So yeah, this yellow-billed cuckoo one, the bird survey, again, same thing. Nice to put instructions and reminders, especially because this survey is very, it's dictated by a Fish and Wildlife Service protocol. Constraints, people always seem to swap distance to the bird and bearing, and so just having those constraints really helps people, remind them, okay, you're looking at the compass bearing, tell me what the compass bearing is now. Other great things, the cascade select, so we can choose, we always start with the client, and then it filters the client based on the client. Here are your transects, or here is your survey areas. So that's always super nice, as cascade selects. Also, the big one for the bird surveys has been making things required. Starting to do the project management, it's amazing. We visit these transects or survey areas 4 times in a year, but maybe 4 different survey crews go out to collect the data, and each crew thinks that photos have already been taken, habitat photos have already been taken, and you come back and you realize that you have no habitat photos of a transect. And so making those things required and providing reminders, hey, have you taken a habitat photo recently, are super helpful. Again, awesome thing about Survey123 is being able to group questions. So then, for instance, our YBC detections. Did you detect a YBC on your transect? Yes, no. If no, they don't ever have to see all this group of detection questions. If yes, then yeah, they get to answer all the fun stuff about finding a detection. And then the last thing we just started implementing was calculation. So based on their geo point, once they input their compass bearing and their distance, we can calculate the projection to the bird. And so that's been really fun and really cool to be able to do.
And then the nice thing there, these calculations are hidden from the field crew. So they just put their compass and bearing, and it will spit out northern and eastern UTM. One thing that we learned this year, this was our first year doing that calculation, is that we went straight to UTM, but we will update it to put lat long in it, so we can automatically publish that related table as another feature service on ArcGIS Online. Now this year we're going to have to take it into ArcGIS Pro and into ArcMap and publish it from there using the coordinates of the northern and eastern. That if we have just a lat long, you can publish it straight in AGOL or Enterprise without taking it, downloading it, and republishing it.
So here's just, the back end Excel, and the biggest thing the biggest takeaway we have is that because this is an Excel-based tool, somebody like me, not a GIS person, I was still able to create these survey forms that now have become a standard for all projects that are completing this task, which is fantastic. It's been great to be able to, as a project manager, if you're looking at YBC survey data, you get your first survey session in and you've got low detection numbers. Yellow-billed cuckoo is a migrant bird, so it comes with monsoons. If you've got low detection numbers, you can take a look and see other YBC surveys for other projects across the state. Are those numbers also pretty low? Is that something we need to investigate why these numbers are low? Or, oh, it's because monsoon rains hasn't hit, they haven't migrated up, yet. So it's been really helpful to see a whole bunch of project data all in one place and getting that feedback right away to be able to let your clients know or let agencies know, what's going on out in the field.
We have a couple questions. A couple people are asking about the tablets with rain, with heat. Has there been any issues with battery life, seeing the screen in the sun, those kinds of things?
I think the battery life has just, we started off with some Samsung tablets and Chuck has just, been able to look into different types of tablets we can use. We've had iPads, we've had different brands. I just think the battery life has just gotten immensely better and better. I think for some of those surveys that we were doing where it was kind of backcountry backpacking, Chuck had invested in some external battery packs. So that worked fine. We were still taking tablets out when we were camping for 2 days at a time without, a way to charge things. Sun, it's also, the screen's gotten a lot better over the past couple of years. I just stand where I'm shadowing the tablet and it works fine. Some people have complained, yes. If you let the tablet sit in the sun in your car, it overheats until you can kind of let it cool down. But overall, I think that hasn't really, it's just gotten better and better with the technology.
Yeah, I totally agree with Maggie. So the screen is always going to be the hardest thing. And that's going to be the most expensive price point on any tablet. We find Apples are a little better than Samsung or Android tablets, but they overheat. We have overheating issues on Apples. We made a company decision to go Apple, and we currently have 40 cell iPhones. So they have cell service, so live connections to our portal or to our ArcGIS Online. And we have 2 iPad Pros, and we still have some layover Samsung active tabs. We made that decision on Apple based on a couple of factors. The nicest thing with Apple products is they're all on the same operating system. As with Androids, they have different versions, and we've had some hiccups there. So we decided there. We have some protocols for the overheating issues, where we give a spare phone or a spare tablet. Or my favorite trick is ice cold Mountain Dew taped to the back of a cover. It looks funny, but it does actually work in those extreme conditions. So we have those. We give insulated bags to keep them in as well. But the screen is going to be where we get the most complaints from, and there's nothing we can do about the Arizona sun. So that's one of the main reasons we went with the Apple products, is they just seem better in the sun. Hopefully that answered those questions, or that question. We have another one, Mariah?
You kind of touched on half of this question, what tablets you're using and as like GPS units to collect the data, if it's what's actually in the unit or additional.
Yep. So like I said, we currently are transitioning to the iPhones and iPads. We have, like I said, iPad Pro, second or first generation iPads, the Pros, and then we have the iPhone 10s, I believe. For a lot of our projects, we're just using the internal GPS. But switching over to these smart devices, we have the flexibility to add different GPS units, Bluetooth GPS units. We have 5, I believe now, Bad Elf Flex units. That gives us the ability to collect sub-meter real time. Or if we have cell service and we can get to that centimeter grade, where we can connect to a base station such as ADOT core station or a private survey network. We use that mostly when we're doing our archaeology data recovery and getting that accuracy. But when we're doing traditional surveys, we're using that sub-meter option. We also have a few Bad Elf Surveyor Pros and Pluses. Those are little Bluetooth pucks, and that gets us either a meter or sub-meter. They say sub-meter. I'm usually right around 1.5 meters, 2 meters. And then the Pros, which is in that 2 to 5, and I'm usually a little closer to 5 there. The nice thing with these smartphones is you can put on aerials and download aerials, even if you're in an offline environment where you could, adjust your points based on that aerial as well. So the smart devices gives us such flexibility depending on our needs. Did that answer that question?
Yep, you're all clear on questions. You can go ahead.
Okay. So now the mapping side of things. So Maggie has created all these great forms. And the one thing I'd like to point out, the biggest transition I believe we did, we went from jobs-centric tasks or to data. So job-specific data, it's tied to a job number, and that's where the data lives, to task-specific data, where it lives in one database. No matter what job we do, it's in one central location. And like Maggie says, is we have long-term projects that are gone on since I've started, so 16 years and still going. To look for that data from 10, 5, 2 years ago, before we started doing this, was always time consuming. Now we can go to one central database, look it up. We can filter by job, client, by year, and so forth. So that I think is the biggest change to me, that it's task specific, not job specific. So when I started, basically we printed out paper maps. The field crew used the paper maps and disposable cameras. And this was really the way we did jurisdictional delineations, where we would go and map the widths of drainages on a project for the Clean Water Act. And every couple hundred meters, they would get a measurement, take a picture, mark it on the map. We get those maps back. We get a box of disposable cameras, back in the day with film, where you had to take it and get it developed. We would have to match those prints or those photo points written on either a blue line aerial or an aerial with different color inks and try to get the photo matched up. Very time consuming, very many late nights of trying to do that. We transitioned to Garmin GPS units with cameras. huge step forward. We could create project locations as backgrounds or as tracks built in. The field crew would go and it worked great until the project changes. Same with the Trimble. We could create shape files and use a background. That, as many people know, projects usually don't stay the same, and we have update. We couldn't update those devices until they got back the following week. Usually they're out all week. If the project changed midday, they wouldn't know, or we would have to let them know that they couldn't use these devices to help them. That changed when we started using Collector, and then, you know, we're looking at field maps. We're still a little bit behind the times. Now on a single device, they can have high quality aerials, all their layers, that the project manager sees the exact same thing they're seeing on a web connected computer. They'll be able to see in real time their field collected data, and also the field crew, at least daily, could see changes to the project. And like I said, we have the flexibility to connect different GPS via Bluetooth for higher accuracy if it needed, and that's task driven. Archaeology is always using the sub-meter to that centimeter, sub-foot level of accuracy or precision. The biology usually are good with that 3 to 5 meter. So either a puck or their internal GPS is usually fine for them, except on certain tasks. The biggest change that we like with these devices is the ability to remotely update devices remotely with project changes. The ability to see what other crews are collecting. So a lot of our projects are large, and we have crews of 2 to 4 people, multiple crews on one project. They can do it in real time if we have cell service, or they can see it daily. So we can see what's been surveyed, what they're finding. It really helps the team as well. And like Maggie says, the project managers or the task managers can analyze the data as soon as possible. Previously, Maggie would be in the field all field season. We would get the data in. They wouldn't look at it for, you know, weeks after all the other surveys were done. So it might be a month or 2 before they actually look at their field collected data. Unfortunately, that was just the workflow back then. For the GIS group, it's one single workflow. We're using ArcGIS Desktop right into Pro. We're not converting to shape files and then to terracing. IMP files or IMG files for governments, GPX files, KMZs, and so forth. It's one solid workflow that really works well. We are now, if you saw ESRI's presentation yesterday with collaborations, we're using those collaborations so our sub-consultants, different sectors within WestLand can see that data right away, and client and agencies. We've had great experience of taking that field collected data, sharing it to another web app that the Corps of Engineers can review all our JDs. Before, we would have to print 1 to 200 scale maps, have them review it by paper, send them back. We make those changes, send it back, and it would be a series of iterations of printing these large maps and sending them over to the agencies to review. 1 to 200 scale map for a 16 to a 30 mile transmission line, that's a lot of paper. We can send a web map with the ordinary high water mark, our field widths, and all our field photos. They can review it, make edits or suggest changes via online. once we're finalized that, and then we print out one final set of maps to get stamped and approved. So it has saved us a lot of effort on that as well. Our clients, and I'll show a demo next where our clients actually see our progress of our survey areas, and they can highlight areas that need to be surveyed next, you know, their priorities in real time. Any questions before I go to the live demo?
No.
Okay. So let me go here real quick. So right here, I have a biological survey we're conducting right now. The solid blue are areas we've already surveyed. Purple is planned, what we need to do next, and blue outline is what's in progress. So we currently have 2 crews out in this area right here and one in here as of today. And they can see and they can update those when they're completed. So they can come in here and choose a polygon. I'm not going to choose one they're actually in right now. So they can come in here, hit edit via their smartphone. Obviously it looks a little different, or the project manager can come in here and change that to planned, in progress, or completed. The nice thing here is a project manager can get a call from our client and say, we need to survey this grid, and we've gridded out their whole project, alphanumeric grid, 10-acre grid across their whole project. They can come in here and go here and say high priority, and it turns pink. This site has cell service. The crew will get this automatically and see a pink area, and they can move over there as soon as possible. The same layer is on our client's ArcGIS Online account, and they have access to it. And they can set priorities that our project managers see that our field crews don't see, but it's all the same layers that they can adjust. So it's a very collaborative. Sorry, guys. Very collaborative tool that has been working great. So I'm going to switch this back over to planned and hit close, just in case they don't move over there. Okay. Here, and then I think that's about it for us. Are we doing okay on time?
I think it's good. I think the break you had for questions was good. We don't see any more here. If that's all you have, we can move on to the next one.
Maggie, did you have anything else to add?
Oh, I think that's perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to introduce the next session. My name's Elizabeth, and I work with a group of folks who will be presenting utilizing mobile applications for asset inventory and biological monitoring for natural resources at Pima County. The presenters are Nick Bisley, Sara, and Becky Steinnecker. And I think it's a good idea if they introduce themselves quickly here before their presentation.
I'll go first. My name is Becky Steinnecker. I'm a GIS analyst at Pima County ITD GIS, and I mostly work with the Natural Resources, Parks and Recreation Department.
Hi, I'm Sara Harders. I also work primarily with the Parks and Rec Department along with Becky, and then occasionally I get pulled into other projects for our Office of Sustainability and Conservation and Flood Control District.
I am Nick Bisley. I work primarily with DOT with Pima County and also a little bit with NRPR, Natural Resources, Parks and Recreation.
So thank you, Elizabeth, for introducing us. Jessica Little also helped us with this presentation, but she is unable to be here with us today. She sends her regrets. So basically, mobile collection is vital to maintaining and updating asset inventory. And we wanted to just share our ideas and our experiences of the why and how for using mobile devices, as well as the apps that go with them to enhance and improve fieldwork. We have always captured data in the field, whether it was on a stone tablet and paper notebook or a modern tablet and notebook. And the benefits for this technical approach for using GIS in the field are many. Key benefits that we found in our experience include that they save time and money by reducing and even eliminating the paper processes. They boost accuracy by reducing all that human error when we're trying to transfer paper data from the field to the databases. They provide real-time location intelligence, so updates and changes in the field can be seen immediately by our coworkers in the office, assuming there's a connection. And they provide the ability to share and edit data with multiple people at the same time. So if you do have several field crews out working in an area, they can all talk to each other. And also it benefits the folks in the field because it lets them work offline, but they can still access their features and base maps, which can help them while they're in the field. So Sara?
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, so you have several device options for mobile data capture. WestLand actually introduced some of them that Pima County uses as well. So these can have Android or iOS operating systems. We also have a few Windows-based devices. So at Pima County, we use a variety. They do cover all three types here. And this slide shows the devices we commonly use for our mobile data collection. So we have the Trimble handheld, Samsung Pro tablets, Panasonic ToughPad tablets, and Apple devices. So these units out of the box typically have an integrated receiver, and they'll have varying levels of accuracy depending on the device you've chosen. And these are usually in the 9 to 16 foot accuracy. The one exception on this slide is the Trimble handheld unit, which is about sub-meter accuracy outside the box. So these are great for your general surveys, surface asset inventory, and most of them have options for ruggedization, so you can use them in open space areas, which we do have quite a few in Pima County, so we're out there quite often. Apple devices, unfortunately, aren't quite as rugged, so we don't tend to take those out into our open space areas for now. If there is better accuracy required, there's a few peripherals that you can connect to that I'll be going into. For greater accuracy, these peripheral devices can be connected via Bluetooth to enhance your staff's tablets and phones. So the accuracy will range from sub-meter to sub-foot, depending on the unit that you're using. So the peripherals on this slide on the left, that would be the Trimble R1 and the Bad Elf GNSS receiver. Those are both sub-meter accuracy units. The ones on the right are the R2 by Trimble and the Bad Elf Flex, which you can get up to sub-foot accuracy for that. So for most of the Pima County's data collection purposes, the sub-meter peripherals are perfectly adequate for what we're doing. The sub-foot would be handy for any of the subsurface asset inventory, or if you're taking any ground control points for aerial flights or drone flights, those would be wonderful. And these units can be a little bit cumbersome. It's an extra thing to bring out for our staff in the field, but most of them don't mind. At least for the ones on the left side, they're tiny enough that you can just clip them onto a backpack while you're working. So it's actually pretty efficient to use. Next slide. And then for peripheral comparison, I was fortunate to go out to do some backflow inventories for our natural resources park and rec. So I got to take out all these units and just see how they performed in the field. So I won't get too much into the weeds into this, but just to give you guys an overall view of this, some of these devices do a little bit better than others. So the Bad Elf and the Trimble handheld were the best overall for interface, connection, and reliability for us. The R2, while it had the best accuracy, I did have a few connection issues depending on where I was in the field, which made it just a little bit less reliable overall. For performance in different locations, the Trimble handheld did the best, mainly due to that integrated GNSS receiver that already gives you that sub-meter accuracy. So depending on your location, some of these other peripherals, they just lose their Bluetooth connection and need to be reconnected, which can be a little frustrating when you're already hot and you've been outside for hours. Next slide. So in addition to the devices and the peripherals that you can take out for data collection, there's also a variety of different apps available to use. WestLand went really into detail with their Survey123 app that they've had, and we do use that at the county. We also use Collector, Explorer, and Field Maps for many of our departments. So these apps will work with all of the devices I've previously shown and even others that I haven't, except for Field Maps. That is the one app that is only available for iOS and Android. Next slide. Okay, so choosing which app to use depends on the data that you'd like to collect. So some of these apps are going to be more map centric and they're great for when you need a detailed map overview when you're out in the field, whereas others are more form centric for when you're more interested in collecting the detailed attributes. So Collector and Explorer, they're both map centric and they can support different base maps depending on your field worker's preference. So for most departments at the county, we typically use our county's ortho imagery for base maps. It's very detailed imagery and our field staff just tend to basically use pretty much only that one. Collector allows you to edit the data and it's currently used for asset and our biological inventories, while Explorer is only going to support markups to your maps without any data editing. So Explorer will refresh the data nightly, which is nice if you want some nice, accurate, up-to-date stuff for sending to supervisors or doing some reports for feedback. Survey123 is a form-centric app, and we use that for a lot of asset inventory as well as for recording any maintenance issues we're having. You can include a map in the app, but there's other ones that are a little better for that, so I'd use those if a detailed map is what you really need. This app does allow you to use conditional visibility with your attributes, so they'll only appear after you've selected a certain value before. So Field Maps, that's a recent ESRI app, and that will combine the 5 apps into one, which is includes Explorer and Collector. It'll allow both map and form-centric data collection, which is great for collecting assets that require a large number of attributes to be filled in. And similarly to Survey123, it will also allow you to use conditional visibility with your attributes only appearing after a certain value has been entered. And with that, Nick will go into AGO versus Portal.
Hi there. Sorry, I was having a minor computer issues, so I hopped in the office next door, which happens to be Elizabeth. So when starting a new project, it's important to understand what type of access and security are required, because this will ultimately determine if it needs to live in ArcGIS Online, otherwise known as AGO, or Portal. Once it's created, it is not easy to change from one to the other without rebuilding the project. So AGO exists in the cloud, outside of your internal network, and is available to external stakeholders. This could be useful for apps that gather publicly sourced information or apps that need to be available outside of network downtimes. However, there is an added security risk with this public access due to the presence of potentially unsavory characters. Next slide. One method to increase security is to create a project in the Portal environment. Portal exists within your internal network servers that are controlled and maintained within your organization. This does require more maintenance, and access is restricted to only internal stakeholders, but it does create a more secure environment. Next slide. Mobile field maps all require some type of base map on which the data will be overlaid. In our experience, Users tend to prefer orthomosaic imagery for field data collection, as it can provide a more realistic view of the working area. The default ortho map can be used, or another imagery source can be saved as a tile package, otherwise known as a TPK. These can be side-loaded onto the devices. TPK allows the user to define an area, but it does have to fit within the storage capacity of the device. Additional storage can be added to most devices, for example, with a micro SD card. One benefit of using a TPK with the Collector app, for example, is the ability to download offline areas onto the device and make edits in the field without network, Wi-Fi, or cell connectivity. Next slide. Here's an example of a collector map created by Pima County GIS for the Desert Tortoise Survey. This was made for the Office of Sustainability and Conservation. The portal environment was used since the data resides in an enterprise database and could be published to portal via ArcGIS server as live feature layers. Staff can make edits online or create offline areas to use in the field when removed from the network. Creating an offline area creates a new version in the database. When users sync their offline edits at the end of the day, it updates their version. Then a nightly processing script reconciles and posts their version to the default, also updating the web services in portal. Just a couple troubleshooting notes with this approach. Just be sure that portal user types and roles have editing permissions, and that base maps are set up to be used for offline use. And here is that workflow that we just discussed here. So you can see how it starts in the top left corner in the enterprise database, and then is published to portal as an editable feature layer. A web map is configured, downloaded into Collector, where a user creates a new version, makes edits, and syncs offline edits back to their personal version. Those edits are then reconciled and posted to the default version through automated scripts. Next slide. Another example from Pima County is with the Department of Transportation. They wanted a way to provide live road closure updates to staff and the public, usually from monsoon flooding events. AGO was used because it needed to be available independent of county network downtimes, and Survey123 was incorporated for public data input. There is a list of locations to choose from in Survey123, or new locations can be added. This list forms the main hosted feature layer, which provides a live look at the network. There is also a related table that stores the histories of each location for reporting and analysis. We are using a webhook functionality in Survey123 to send live SMS and email updates to DOT staff and to send live public updates to other external stakeholders via Gov delivery. I will now pass the presentation back to Sara.
Thanks, Nick. So yeah, here is a prototype of the Field Maps app for our Natural Resources, Parks and Recreation Department. This app was created for backflow preventer assembly asset inventory. So the census data set is tied in with external water company providers such as Tucson Water or Metro Water. NRPR wanted a current asset inventory with some more detailed attributes as a way to keep track of maintenance changes to these backflows. So this app was the prototype, since we are slowly transitioning some of our collector apps over to Field Maps, since that's the shiny and new thing from ESRI. So it was great for this project, since we not only needed that detailed reference map, but there's also a lot of data that had to be collected with the detailed attributes as well. So eventually I'll hand this over to our staff, and then they can use this to add, remove, and update any backflows when our trades staff for NRPR conducts their annual inspections. And so this app, if your staff has been used to using Collector, it's pretty easy for them to integrate into this one. There might be just a minor learning curve where some things are just shifted a little different. And as far as the backend, when you're creating these, it's very similar to Collector. So I think if you're switching over in your department, it's actually not too painful. So I don't foresee too many catch points with our staff. Next slide.
Thanks, Sara. So the problem with all the apps, though, are some of them require a little more technical savvy, but not all of our staff are tech savvy. One weekend, there was an emergency at one of our parks, and the Parks and Recs trades folks were unable to access the plans for utility using their cell phones on a weekend. So we created an app using Explorer because it was very simple to view features, to pull up their plans from an electronic database, and then they could mark up on the map any problems they saw and then just share them with their supervisor. And the trades folks are people like electricians, plumbers, and they really needed that simplicity. Explorer lets them access the maps, the data very easily. It didn't bog them down with tons of tools and functionalities, questions, anything like that. And they could really easily just draw on the map, create a markup, and then share it using an email or a text to coworkers or their supervisor. And as Sara mentioned previously, the data is refreshed overnight. So it's very current for them. They have everything up to date each day and then also over the weekend. Users do need to have ArcGIS Online accounts for this. So we made sure they were set up beforehand. It wasn't real difficult for this team because they're just a handful of users for the app. And then we had a class to help them with adding the app to their phones and a little hands-on training to be able to use the app. So that worked out really well. But like any organization, Pima County is made up of a variety of people from all backgrounds and training and with all types of personalities. So some are tech savvy, like we discussed, and some are really anti-tech and they kind of push back. They don't really want to change. Some don't even have a smartphone yet. We also have a lot of coworkers that are in the field all day and don't even have computers assigned to them, like a lot of the park technicians who work out of maintenance shops. So we have to keep all of this in mind when we're designing the apps for them to use. We really want them to want to use the apps. And one thing that can help with this is to make sure folks know how to use the apps. So we have training, and training everyone is very important to have a successful program. At the county, we constantly develop various levels of training for the different needs of staff, but also their different levels of expertise in using the technology. So we create and offer hands-on training, which I think is the best way to do it. It helps the users, helps all of our coworkers feel very comfortable with the devices and the apps. I mean, we still have people that they think they're going to break something, and the hands-on really enables them to understand they're not going to break it and gives them some practice. And then we can also create written SOPs and short how-to videos as helpful refreshers. Just remember, when you're working with your teams, stay versatile. Well-trained employees are necessary for successful GIS, and the training just can't end there. You have to be available for support when they're actually in the field and an emergency arises. So to help support them, we need to know what might not work according to plan, because if things don't work, no one's going to want to use that device or that app. So we try to be able to troubleshoot everything they're going to encounter. And if you've ever been out in the field, you might have been in a canyon in the middle of nowhere. You just can't get good satellite reception. Or trying to juggle the tough pad, the MeFi, and a bad elf all at the same time on a steep slope of a mountain, it's really tough. So we found that it's really good practice to go out the first few times into the field with staff and observe their workflow to better assist when problems do occur, to see what doesn't work, or just to see how you can help improve their workflow. Because not all projects encounter the same types of issues. So knowing what those technical issues are will help us help them. Sara?
Great. Yeah, and so in addition to the technical issues that Becky just went through, there's also common environmental factors that can impact your data collection. So depending on the season, there's hazard staff are going to encounter in the field that can delay data collection or even negatively affect the mobile devices. Such as when collecting in the summer, it gets super hot. So sometimes it's too hot for our staff to be out for very long, which could end the collection early and It can even impact the battery life of some mobile devices, so they'll just have a reduced battery life. So for this reason, we usually have staff take battery backups if they plan to be out for long periods of time, especially in the summer. For some of our field staff, their data collection is going to take them to places that are very far from established routes, and they're literally off the beaten path. So some of these can only be accessed by ATV or by horseback, and that can be very time consuming to get to them. And also that can be really hard on any mobile tech devices you're sending out with your staff. So they'll need to be rugged and they'll need to be resistant to fall damage or to getting wet. So depending on the hazard your staff's going to encounter, some of these projects may need to be extended to accommodate for that. And you need to be willing to be flexible on deadlines and give your field staff ample time to complete their data collection. Next slide. And with that, we are done with our presentation. Thank you all for joining us today. One of our major takeaways we want to give to you is to be prepared to prep your people, not just your data. And with that, if there's any questions, comments, we'll take those now.
Hi, yep, thank you for this. Very informative. We have a couple questions. One is, are you using version controls for the field versus production?
Yeah, I can answer that from my perspective. At least in the portal environment, we do use controls for the for different versions, just so we can, know who's making edits and when they were done. At least from the portal perspective, absolutely.
Yeah, and to add on to what Nick said, for a lot of our NRPR stuff, we still use AGO, so they're not going directly into the default. So what we have our users do is they download a file geodatabase from AGO, do their QA/QC, and then that will get imported into their versioned environment of the default, and then we'll have scripts run over the weekend and update everything. So it does show whether you're doing portal or you're doing the AGO version, you are still showing what staff has been working in this data.
Thank you. I think we are out of time. I want to thank everybody for showing up. Chris, if you have one last question, if you want to shoot one of these folks a message in the attendee portal, I think that your question has a little bit more of an elaborate answer. Again, thanks for everyone for your presentation. For the attendees, please make sure you take the session survey that will be on this page when you close out. The recording will be available shortly, and you can always revisit it here. Thanks again for our speakers.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.